Welcome to another show. I'm Sid, and today I'll be continuing where I left off in the previous video, showing you the teal and orange patch. The first 2 minutes of footage will be the same as what I showed you in the previous video, so feel free to skip ahead if you've already seen that one. But basically, I'll be showing you how you can create a screen tap and hold effect, and I will also show you how to combine that patch with the 3x3 convolution, Sobel filter, and the opacity technique, which I showed you in a previous video, probably linked above or in the description somewhere, which when you tap on the screen creates an effect like this, which I think is pretty cool. You can also tap it again and it will pause it in place. I like the way the light looks, by the way, just as an aside. And also the things I have stuck to the wall in the background, you can also re-tap on the screen and it will return to normal again. So it's pretty cool. Hopefully the way I break it down, you can take the features that are most relevant to you and use them in your own projects. But with all that being said, let's just jump straight into it. Okay, so here we are in a new project. First thing, switch over to 2D view, open up my patch editor and create a little bit more space so that we can work down here. I'm also going to expand this and we're good to go. Okay, so now I'm going to hit add object and we'll select a rectangle from the drop down menu. That will appear nested inside of this canvas. Now we're going to fill the width and fill the height and add a material. I'm going to rename the rectangle to teal and orange, and I'm going to rename the material teal and orange as well. Now we can change the shader type from standard to flat and select from the camera up here in our scene, hit this plus button and it will extract the camera texture as an asset down here. Now we can drag that in here, select from our library, patch assets, type in teal, and it will bring up the teal and orange patch, which is one of the user created patches submitted by Kevin Cripper. We're going to import that into our scene and then drag into the patch editor. Now we can connect from this RGBA output to the texture input, and from the teal and orange material that we've created, we're going to create a texture patch, and we're going to connect this output here to this input. And there it is, the most basic version of the teal and orange patch effect. If I switch over to the FaceTime camera, you'll see that it's pretty dark. That is also because I'm in a dark room and there's a backlight behind me, so it's creating more of a stark contrast. But you can adjust the opacity and it will change the effect slightly. You can bring it down even more and just play around with that till you're happy with the result. I'll leave that at 75 for now because I think it works pretty well. Now what I'm going to do is add a screen tap in here. I'm going to select our teal and orange rectangle, create a patch for the visibility. Now I'm going to connect from the gesture state output here to the visibility input. That will add a switch in between, which when flipped will alternate between the regular camera texture and the teal and orange patch that we've created. So it turns the visibility on or off for this rectangle here with the material teal and orange patch applied here. So like I say, that is the most simple version of this effect. Now we're going to add a little bit more interaction, screen tap and hold, Sobel filter, how to adjust the opacity, things like that. So let's get into it. Oh, and you may notice that time seems to have moved forwards a little bit. I look slightly different. Don't worry too much about that. Yeah, so the first thing we're going to do now is delete the screen tap and the switch that we've created and replace that with a screen tap and hold. So let's do that. We can connect from the gesture state output to the visibility input of our teal and orange rectangle. And now when we tap and hold on the screen, it alternates between one and the other. We can also add a second rectangle by duplicating the one we already have. Rename it to just rectangle. Add a new material, which we can also just rename to rectangle. Change the shader type to flat, add our camera texture, and then select back here and add a visibility patch, drag that into place, and from the gesture state output we're now going to add a not patch which reverses the boolean signal and connect that to our rectangle's visibility. Now when we tap and hold on the screen it's the same effect, but you can see it more clearly down here and it will help later on when we add a lot more patches. The reason for getting rid of the screen tap and replacing it with the screen tap and hold is that we will be using the screen tap for something else a little bit later, so it's just forward thinking and a little bit easier. So the next thing I'm going to do is add in the other patches we'll be using. So select your library, patch assets, type in Sobel and add this Sobel filter, so import that into your project, and then do the same thing for the 3x3 convolution, so import that, and once you have both of those you can close the library and go back to your project. Now we're going to select our device up here and drag that in as a patch because we'll also be using that in a little while. I'm going to just tidy things up a little bit, move that down, maybe move this down here, get things kind of together, give myself a bit more space. We'll have that there. We don't really need to see that right now, so it'll probably get pushed down off the screen eventually. But for now, I'm going to add in our Sobel filter, so drag that inside of here, and we're going to connect from this RGBA output of our camera texture to the texture input of our Sobel filter. Then I'm also going to drag our 3x3 convolution in here, and I'm going to connect from this output here to the texture input on that patch. And now from the output of this 3x3, we're going to add a swizzle. We're going to change the X value here to RGB because we're connected to the RGBA output value from our camera texture. And from there, we're going to connect out and add a pack. By default, the pack appears as a vector 3, but we're going to change that to a vector 2, and it will fix the project if it's broken. Now, rather than drag out and create a new patch, we're actually going to take the teal and orange patch and drag it in here for a second time. So we now have this one and we have a second one here, and we're going to connect from the vector output of our pack to the texture input of our teal and orange. Now we're going to take the new material that we've created for our second rectangle and add the shader diffuse texture as a patch, and that will be our final output. So connect that up, but you still won't immediately see any effects, so we have a few more things to add. In fact, what we're going to do now is take the rest of this setup with the Sobel filter and the 3x3 convolution and combine it with the opacity technique, which I showed you in a previous video that I got from Catalyst, and we're going to put those two together to create the effect that you saw in the beginning of the video. So what we need now is to come over here to our device, drag out from the screen size output, and we're going to create a divide patch, and that automatically connects up here to the first value. Now you want to take the screen scale here and connect that to the second value, make a little bit of space for it, and connect from this output to the texture size input of our Sobel filter. So now we've got the beginnings of our opacity setup going through the Sobel filter, the 3x3 convolution, and eventually it will come out through this rectangle here. So the next thing we're going to do is from the RGBA output of our camera texture, we're going to drag out here and we're going to create a second swizzle. This one will represent the alpha channel of our RGBA, because this one is already the RGB part. So now we have our alpha channel. We're going to connect from here and we're going to create a multiply patch, and we're going to leave that connected to our first value, and we're going to connect the output from multiply to the second value input of our pack patch. There's the effect. It's not exactly what you might have expected, but that's because we need to adjust some of the numbers here in this 3x3 convolution patch. Now, for the purposes of this tutorial and to keep things simple, I'm going to use the numbers that are in the library patch assets preview. So if we come here and type that in, then you'll see that by default, the numbers are set at -1 across the board and then 8 in the middle. I'm actually going to change the bottom row to 0, and I'll leave it up to you to play around with it and adjust it for yourself, but feel free to check that if you're not sure. So I'm going to change this top line here to be all -1, then this value to -1, this value here to 8, this value to -1. You can already see the change taking place, and the more you play around with it, the more varied effects that you'll be able to see. I'm going to leave these 3 at 0 though. As you can see, it's pretty cool, but it's a little bit harsh, so you might want to adjust the opacity the same way we did with our teal and orange here, because that's still sitting at 75%. So when we tap and hold, it switches over to our teal and orange, and it's at 75% opacity there. So we can go back to the rectangle here and just slide the opacity down to around 75% just to mute the colors and the effects slightly. Now we need something to trigger it, so we're going to set up a loop animation, and that's where our screen tap is finally going to come back into play, and it's going to trigger the effect so that it goes from a range of 0 all the way through to 1, showing off the Sobel and then reversing itself. So for that, we're going to add a screen tap patch in here. Things are getting a little messy here, but I will organize it and go through everything at the end. So if you're a little bit confused now, just stick with it. I'm sorry that I'm explaining it in quite a poor fashion. So now we have our screen tap. We're going to connect from here and we're going to add a switch. From our switch, we want to drag out and add a loop animation, which always appears very far away for some reason. And from the progress output, we're going to add a transition. Now the transition by default is set at vector 3, but we can change that with this drop down menu to be a number. And now we can connect from the value output of our numbered transition to the second value input of our multiply patch. And our effect disappears, which is pretty sweet. If I tap on the screen, then it automatically begins working, and I can hold on the screen, so screen tap and hold, and it will alternate between the original rectangle, now with the Sobel and convolution patches, and this teal and orange effect, which kind of looks like the setting sun a little bit, which I kind of like. We let that go, it goes back to the way it was. You can adjust this slightly, so let's bring this down a little bit, maybe like 3.5, or actually one Instagram story is 15 seconds, so 7.5 would be half of that, and then 3.75 would be half of that. So if we mirror it with this checkbox, this boolean here, and then set it to be 3.75, then it will take exactly 7.5 seconds for it to go all the way up and all the way back down, which means it will cycle through 2 complete loops in a single Instagram story. You can also tap on the screen and it will pause the effect in place. So as you can see here, it's currently at 0.79. You can check the progress in this transition patch here, and if I tap on the screen again, then it will start reversing, and you can pause it at any point with a slight outline, which could be a nice effect, or allow it to go all the way. And as I said before, you can tap and hold on the screen at any point, even while the effect animation is looping, and it'll switch over to this basic teal and orange effect. So yeah, that's pretty much everything I want to show you in this video. I'm going to make this slightly larger and shrink that down, and I'm just going to organize everything quickly so I can go through this one more time and explain how it's working. Okay, so here's our final patch setup. As you can see, everything's a little bit more organized now, so hopefully you can follow along and make sense of it yourself, even if what I've said wasn't well explained. But as you can see here, we have our 2 rectangles with the 2 materials set up. One is a basic teal and orange, which is only interacted with down here. So we have the screen tap and hold, which when I just reset it to 0, everything's looking normal. Our default rectangle is this 3x3 Sobel filter, but the screen tap hasn't activated it yet, so it just looks like a normal camera. When we screen tap and hold, it alternates and switches to this teal and orange effect, using the knot patch down here to alternate between the visibility of the two rectangles. We also have a screen tap, which starts this loop animation that transitions using the opacity technique that I showed you in previous videos to increase and decrease the range of effect that this Sobel filter and 3x3 convolution have. So we're controlling the RGB and alpha values using these swizzles. They go through a pack. We combine that with a second teal and orange patch, and it comes out as the final end result in our rectangle. I know this was a little bit more complex than it maybe should have been. It's quite a simple filter once you get the hang of it, and you can play around with it, replace the teal and orange with something else, like maybe the color cycles patch, or really anything. It's worth playing around with and seeing what you can create. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. I know I said I had more videos ready to upload a couple of weeks ago, but I lost half of the footage while I was editing them, and then all of the project files got corrupted, so that's why I'm jumping back and forward through time and editing some of these videos in a weird way. Hopefully you're okay with that and it still makes sense as a tutorial. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this video. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, share it somewhere where you think people might be interested in learning this kind of stuff. And yeah, I do want to keep making these videos more regularly. I'm trying to get them out as quickly as possible, but with my schedule right now, things are a little bit busy. I'm still at work and I have been for the whole year, so putting these videos out takes up quite a bit of my free time. And honestly, I have been catching up on TV shows because I recently got a free trial of Amazon Prime. So there it is. That's the truth of the matter. I watched The Magicians, I watched Preacher, I watched The Boys. I've absolutely been binging Amazon Prime while it's free, to the point where I'm even tempted to pay for one more month just so that I can keep watching stuff, because there's so many movies and TV shows and anime on there. And now I sound like an ad, but that isn't the intention. Yeah. Thank you for being subscribed, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.
Hello, did you know I have a Gumroad page where I'm selling a bunch of filters? If not, check it out, links in the description. I also have a Patreon where you can get them at a discounted rate and support the channel. Thank you.